Paddy Cullivan, welcome back to Buckshot.
Oh, it's so great to be back, Tom.
It's I know we're as if we weren't talking just beforehand. There's something weird on your it's on your television behind. There's a woman getting a massage.
Is there? Oh yeah,
it keeps on changing.
Oh no, I've linked my computer to the hotel TV. No, it's actually I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Athlone. It's just the hotel TV. It may look weird, but it's their stuff. It's not mine. It's like, go get a massage, go into the lake, go swimming, book everything online because you have to, because since COVID, everything has to be completely controlled.
Yeah, because heaven forbid you just want to just do your own thing. Like,
no, it's great. Like I booked a hotel and they were like, you must book your swimming time, you must book your dinner time, you must book your breakfast time. Everything must be booked, everything.
The breakfast time, like, fuck all that. Like, I don't grasp. Like, okay,
well, I couldn't check in till 4 for some reason. Like they're so busy, you couldn't check in till 4. So I'm checking out at 3 tomorrow, and they can't do a thing about it. That's my plan anyway.
That's the job. Absolutely milking.
The revolution starts here, Tom. The revolution starts here.
Well, if anybody was going to start it, it'd be you for sure. I would row in behind Commander Cullivan in Tuesday. That sounds well. When I wrote that to you today, that sounded well when I wrote it. It was like that goes well, like, you know.
It does. Wait for me to get my head shot off, and then everybody can take over.
Had you any aspirations to serve at all? Like, because you're a man who knows about a lot of the historical army anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was one of these people weirdly pushing a thing called national service, which I know is very right-wing sounding and very Fine Gael sounding. And you know me, I'm a total Republican Sinn Féiner, Tom. But there's something about those years when you just leave school and you enter college, or you don't enter college, and it's very undisciplined. And there was something I thought about, even if you got people involved, not in army stuff, but in kind of just community stuff. I just thought that would be interesting. Just organize people together. I remember when, I'm 48, so E came along in the early 90s. Yeah. Okay. And the weird thing about E was it broke down cultural barriers and it broke down class barriers. So you'd be hanging out at parties with fellas on the flats, right? Yeah. And it just totally broke down everything. I was in art college, you know, and all the middle class people were hanging out with the working class people. And to me, it reminded me of a kind of, how can we put it, psychedelic national service, which was everybody got high together. I know it sounds strange, but it made a better society. It made Ireland a better place because, you know, all ththese Fine Gael types, they go straight into UCD, you know, from Gonzaga or whatever. Yeah. Then they go straight into RTE or straight into politics. And that's how we get Leo Varadkar. Yeah. And but my point being, if we mixed everybody up for like at least 3 months to 6 months in national service, where they had to mix it with everybody, maybe they would govern a bit better later on in life. Do you know what I'm saying?
So you'd get to wash off the Varadkar Healy-Rae divide and maybe end up with something in the middle, a baby in the middle of sorts, like, which is
like you, Tom, something like you. Do you know what I mean? You know, that would be great. You know, someone who can play a completely posh rugger bugger, right? And then also look like he's in the Allman Brothers band in 1971, living in Alabama and about to marry Cher for 1 week. That's what you look like at the moment, Tom. Now, I'd marry Cher for at least 1 week, even now.
I do it. I mean, to be honest with you, that was the whole idea of the mullet. I'm trying to just lure her out of the cave. I'm just trying to lure her.
Because after Sonny Bono, she would be with anybody.
Anything. I mean, is it even Cher anymore? They could just, you know, done plastic surgery on a lemur, and it would have pretty much, you'd buy it.
She looks fantastic. I love Cher. You know, honestly. Cher and Cher alike, Tom. Cher and Cher alike.
So I do like the idea. I remember talking with a South African guy years ago. I was playing rugby with him, and he said the same thing, that it was great for him. He couldn't believe that we had to choose our path, you know, at 16, 17 years of age.
I'm just saying one summer is enough just to mix it up with people so that the fellas who are headed straight for UCD and straight for law and medicine and all the rest of it have to mix it with the lads from the flats. And funny enough, and the plumbers and the electricians, who I have found recently to be the most intelligent people in the country, are the ones who can actually build stuff.
Yeah.
Let's be quite honest here. Because I remember a show from the 1970s called Survivors, which was amazing. And the first scene, like 98% of the world is wiped out in a pandemic. And the woman is looking for a son, and she bumps into this professor, and he shows her a match, and he says, "Do you know how to make one of these?" And she goes, "No." He goes, "It's a match. You have to know how to make one, because soon these will all run out and all the petrol will run out and you won't know how to light a fire." And like, so like basic skills like this are really important. You know what I'm saying? So we need to find people. We need to mix the whole society together so that later on, fellas don't understand that 400 grand is not a normal price for a house.
Yeah. That's a really, because that's the one thing now you probably would have met far more politicians than I have, but anytime I've met one, I've been so underwhelmed. Do you know, like, because you're like, Jesus Christ, man, you're an alien. You have no grasp whatsoever of. There was one I remember, it was at the ploughing championship. I was hosting this thing, and they wanted me to interview him, and he was a West of Ireland based TD. And it was like the Irish Pictorial Weekly thing. He just actually walked in with his hand like out, like a hello, like it was just stuck to the side of his body, just shaking it at people.
Yeah.
And bit by bit, people got in front of him and he ended up shaking their hands, but he completely bottled it. He was like, he went, no, his people went, no, he's a comedian. No, we're not having this. Like, we're not, no. He'll just say.
I just think, coming from the comedy and the gigging world, you know yourself, like, you have to become a self-made man. You have to get out there, and as we talked about this in our last one, go to places like Tremor and die miserably on stage. Yeah. And I think all politicians must first, they have to do a stand-up gig. These are part of the rules. You must do a stand-up gig.
Yeah.
That wit that you have in the doll that you think is really funny, it's not that funny, guys. Secondly, you must run a business for at least 1 year of your life, and you must have to deal with all the rates and tariffs and garbage and tax and accountancy and all the rest of it. Because we have a bunch of guys running the country who I don't know what they've done. I really don't know what they've done, Tom, bar just be politicians.
That's my thing. And when you switch over and go, oh, this year you're going to be doing tourism. I know you kind of did a bit when it came to agriculture, but now we're going to do tourism. You're doing that. And and you over there, you're doing health. I know you're 24 stone. I know, but you're doing like the health service. Come on.
And you can do arts, community, Gaeltacht, tourism, bouncy castles, and whatever else. Like they put the arts in with like a billion other things, as if the arts is not like one of the reasons our people come to Ireland. They come here for the arts. Like they do not come here for the banking, right?
No.
Okay, a few people do. But let's be honest, tourism and the arts and the place looking beautiful. Like one of my things is, can we re-roof things like Cashel? Can we put a roof back on Cashel and turn it into an actual building? Yeah. Why does Henry VIII get the last say on what our monasteries look like when he burnt them all down? Why do we just leave them like that? I mean, even somewhere like Warsaw in Poland and Munich, which were flattened in the war, they were all rebuilt. The ancient medieval centers of Munich and Poland date from about the 1950s.
Yeah.
Why do we leave the roof off Cashel? What's going on here? It could be a great wedding venue, comedy venue, hotel, whatever. Anywhere I can play, just make these medieval monasteries into places I can play.
I 100% agree, because there's so many of them just with the roof off, and it's like, come on, lads, come on. And I mean, some places, a place like Cashel and Holy Cross and stuff like that, the level of tourism, they drew the Queen down. She flew her chopper. I mean, it's got to be tasty if the Queen has to go down for a look at it. Like,
yeah. But these lads think Guinness. It's just Guinness and hotel and bed nights. I mean, what have we just done? When I'm seeing hotels in Dublin charging €500 a night, what is that saying to our tourism? What is that saying to American visitors and people like that? They're gonna not call it Ireland. They're just gonna call it Fleeceland. Mm-hmm. Fleeceland, and here's where we go to get ridden. And I mean. And here's the other thing about national service. Any politician who says we want to build the army and send fellas to Ukraine to die in the Russian steppes, they have to send their kids first.
Yes.
Okay? So just like the conscription crisis of 1918, remember, up to that point, the bishops and the politicians were all great supporters of sending Irishmen off to World War I. And then the minute conscription comes in, the bishop's nephew and the mayor's son and everybody else could get called up. And all of a sudden, there's a mass protest against conscription. And the papers are behind it, and the church is behind. The bishops even sign an anti-conscription pledge. So you know what I mean? This is the way Ireland is, You go off there now and die in the Russian steppes. You go off and die in Ukraine, And I'm like, you first, my friend, you first.
It does, but even, I mean, you're not going to turn around the ship on the aliens that we have now, but you may make some normal people. And then, of course, they had full of people that go in there as normal. They're teed up as being absolute lunatics and fanatics from the outset. Yeah. Like, there's the slickest Rick of the whole lot. And this isn't just because I'm biased or whatever, but the slickest Mick politically in the last year has been the Ukrainian president. He is the
very slick.
slickest dude, and just like to camera, the whole lot, and you're like, oh, no wonder you were a successful stand-up. Yeah,
And you like him, but you like him because he's a stand-up, you know?
Yeah,
as well as
yeah.
that, but also the t-shirt. He likes wearing the t-shirt, you know, so he looks like one of the lads. Whereas Putin looks like a stuffy dude in this suit. I'm not defending the Russian invasion or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's a kind of Irish person at the moment that's very hawky and is very much, let's join the EU army, let's do all of that stuff. And I'm a bit of a wolf tone neutral guy. I'm not saying you don't help out and support people, but you know, I'd halted at sending a bunch of Irish kids off to war. Do you know what I mean? Or to that type of thing. And he is a slick dude. I mean, I think that some of the slickest Irish politicians, I think, have to be the ones that did actually run businesses. I mean, for all you can give out about the Healy Rays, they know how to own everything in a town.
It's true. But I mean, at the same time, I suppose it's just kind of shameless coming across like a bit of a lunatic when God him and him is the only one who can make a way in. You're like, relax, Danny, relax. My God, you know. But then he is playing to his people. He knows who's listening to this. Like, they'll go, yeah.
I know, but I'm half the time in Galway down at my parents, you know, and I'm half the time down there at the moment. And I mean, trying to tell those people not to cut turf, you know, you might as well start World War III. I mean, Eamon Ryan really doesn't know the forces he's messing with here. Do you know what I mean? You're trying to tell people who've done something for 5,000 years that they can't do it anymore.
Yeah. It's genetically ingrained in them. Like you're not.
It's like banning Christmas, you know, and then, you know, the same with cows. You know, they're trying to ban cows and saying, oh, cows are the ones causing climate change. Well, the family business, Ireland's family business has been cows for about 5,000 years. Yeah. In fact, my dad remembers when the budget in 1950 was the entire cattle sales to England, and they got a check for 50 million quid, and that was the budget for the year. Okay, so that's all we did was cows.
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, Eamon Ryan, he's barking up the wrong tree that he's hugging at the same time.
Listen, if ever there was a bluffer, that fella, I mean, he's like the fucking.
Well, I have a great joke. I have a great joke at the end of my Michael Collins show, you know, because there's a famous bit where Collins, W.T. Cosgrave was fast asleep, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of a cabinet meeting. And Collins just whacks him over the head, wakes up and goes, you can go back to sleep for all the good you're doing, right? And then I put up the slide of Eamon Ryan fast asleep in the Dáil during a housing debate. And the crowd just bursts out laughing because they cannot bear watching a fella fast asleep during it in the Dáil. And then I said, can you imagine Collins had come back now and just slap the salad out of him? Just slap the salad out.
Oh my God.
You know? And they love him.
The shit and
he's just so annoying. The Greens are so annoying at this point. I mean, I was a Green myself, and now they're like the most hated people on the planet.
Yeah, but in principle, green is a good idea. And if you could approach like, you know, young farmers of today, if you could approach them correctly, you'd no problem, you'd get green stuff over the line. If it was actually made any, like you're talking about Eamon Ryan, who's you know, this guy hasn't been below the red cow, you know, and he's coming out with lines like, I think every small village should share one car. You're like, you motherfucker. It's nothing to do with the man on the street or a cow in a field. It's to do with the huge the huge industry that's pumping shit into the air. Would you stop blaming and trying to divide people and go, you're to blame. I see you. You're to blame. Smoking a fag. You're to blame. Your cow farting. She's to blame.
No, and it's rubbish. No. And look, I mean, and I recommend everybody out there watches a video by Alan Savory. It's a TED Talk. This man worked in Africa for 50 years. He culled 40,000 elephants to his eternal regret. He thought they were causing desertification. He just got a bunch of cattle and started grazing them in the old nomadic way along the edges of deserts. Within a year, those bits of desert were green again. So he has taken thousands upon millions of acres in Mexico, in Africa, and all of this. And they've done this thing of grazing cows on the edges of deserts. And literally within a year, they are back to grassland. So we can reverse it all, weirdly, using cows. So I'm only interested in solutions, not problems and taxes. Don't be giving me taxes and problems and, you know, having the old school truant from Scandinavia roaring at me. Just give me the solutions and let's use natural solutions, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, because I was only talking with somebody recently about their family bog in Mayo, and it's honestly, it is a death in the family, the way they talk about it, because it's taken from them, like.
Yeah.
And then they stick these giant windmills in on top of it. You're like, well, those things are almost useless anyway. Christ above. They're next.
I get annoyed because in the Connemara behind my parents' house, it's like I see them moving and I'm going, that's great. And I know that they only really cost about 8,000 quid to put up, and then they start generating electricity after that. But when I see one not moving, it enrages me.
Yeah.
When I see one not moving, I'm saying, how is it not moving? All the rest of them are moving. What's wrong with this one? It's broken. Is it broken?
They never stop fucking breaking. That's the problem.
It's broken like the toilets in Paulstown garage on the way down. It's the way the seat went in Paulstown garage on the toilet in 1995, and they never replaced it. Like why is it? Bernard had a great joke. Why is everything broken? And he's right. Like, I was in Zurich there. We did 2 corporate gigs with the band, and it was like entering another planet.
Yeah,
it was like where everything worked. There was no homeless people. Everything was beautiful, and the streets were perfectly paved and everything. You get back to Ireland, and there's 7 fellas standing around a hole they're digging, and they're just filling it with tarmac, and they'll get back to it in 10 years, and you trip over it and you break your ankle.
Something I noticed walking, because I'm only back to Dublin for gigs and gone again. Oh, yeah. But I was there the other night at the Laugh Lounge. I was walking across Abbey Street, I suppose it would be, and it's relatively all new paving. Okay. And if you lent anybody anything that came back as dirty as that paving is, you know what I mean? You had a brand new thing and you lent it to them, and it came back a year later as filthy as that. You go, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Like, I know. It's like filthy. I mean, rotten, and it's just solved with a power washer, like at night. Solved with a power washer.
And what's with chewing gum? Sure, I used to. Dubrovnik is this town, this beautiful town which Galway should look like, except they destroyed Galway with concrete and rubbish.
Yeah.
But Dubrovnik, I used to watch them at night, 4 a.m. They take up all the seating, right? And it was all this kind of temporary seating that would be brought into the restaurants and then brought out the next morning. And a fellow would come down and literally wash the entire street with a power hose.
Yeah.
A massive power hose. And like the place was sparkling. And then you just bring everything out the next morning. I mean, why not do that here? I mean, after Pride, the place was like apocalypse now.
I can only imagine.
Crap everywhere. And there was piles of it there till like 12 in the day. And a fellow coming around with one brush, brushing it and just kind of pushing it, and half of it getting away from him. And those
rainbows just flying everywhere.
Those stupid machines coming around that just push the dirt around. I just can't live here anymore. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, Tom. I digress.
I know. No, you're right. It shocked me. It shocked me because I hadn't seen that in quite a while in that fashion. It was like, oh Jesus, right. So it is. No. It's fucking filthy, lads. This is just off our main street, the street that defined our nation. And this is what, and heaven, and not to explain to people too far, but that have never been to Dublin, but our main street of our capital city is is the fucking Wild West from top to bottom. Like it
is. In fact, I'd say that the rebels of 1916 left it in a better state. Most Saturday nights. Or the 2 18-pounder guns the Brits used to blow them out of it. I mean, I grew up just off that street, Tom. I used to have to go to college every day. I went to NCAD from North Grey Georgia Street, and I'd have to do a zigzag. You'd have to actually zigzag down the street and avoid various gangs. And there was a great place called the Hoorden in the Sewer. The Hoorden in the Sewer.
Oh, yeah.
It was the kind of an Olivia monument. And then they had this in a kind of a fountain, right? And then the local people realized if you put your fairy liquid into it, you'd make this gigantic bubble that would just float down O'Connell Street, like, a big carrot. But anyway, I diverge.
So you've always struck me as a sort of fella, especially during lockdown, that you weren't going to sit in your hands, obviously. So because you were more and more vocal on social media, which I always enjoy because I like when people aren't wishy-washy. Do you know what I mean? There's no wishy-washy in Paddy Cullivan. There's not. No. You cut like a chainsaw down whatever tree you want to cut down. Like, but
basically, Tom, I throw the hammer after the hatchet.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I like that.
I have opinions.
Where did they stem from? I didn't really get into the core of that. Was it a staunch Republican household? Was it just a stand up for yourself kind of household?
Well, we're kind of a Republican household. It's an interest in history, really. And you see, if you get interested in history, you can't not form an opinion. Just to use a double negative. And, and you see how history repeats itself. Do you know what I mean? So, and I grew up in the 80s as well in Dublin when we actually had a thing called Section 31. So I laugh at all this kind of where Twitter are banning people and people are defending it, and Google are banning people or YouTube are banning people, and you're kind of going, sure, this is just Section 31 all over again. I mean, Jerry Adams used to come on the TV and Stephen Ray would be mouthing his voice, and it would sound very strange like this, it was all right, but it was just, and you're there going, and yet Lord Fuck, from England and whoever else was allowed to say whatever they wanted. Do you know what I mean? And it was a time when Jerry Adams couldn't get on the TV, but Rhonda Paisley was allowed to have her own chat show.
Wow.
And the first guest was her dad, Ian Paisley. And that was on RTE in 1986. So we lived in a very topsy-turvy world, And so I did get very opinionated. And of course, the North was on and stuff like that. And, and then, of course, knowing my history. And then, which is what I've gotten into lately, knowing my 1798. And then now lately, my Michael Collins. I've formed a lot of opinions. And what I just hate is people, like there was an ahistorical moment yesterday where a fella from Fine Gael, the chief whip, was going, the party of Dev will never beat the party of Collins, which is, he was referring to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Sure, Collins was dead 10 years before Fine Gael was formed under the leadership of Owen Duffy, the fascist, right? And he was dead before Cumann na Gael was even formed. So Collins lived and died a member of Sinn Féin. Do you know what I mean? So it's like very funny to me when people refer to, like, Stephen Collins, the Irish Times journalist, even wrote a book called Fine Gael From Collins to Varadkar. And you're like going, you ahistorical bollocks. That's completely wrong. That's just wrong. You
jumped.
It's just rubbish. So I suppose I've got this finicky thing about getting everything right and wanting people to know the history correctly, which is why I got into the murder of Michael Collins. So over the lockdown, I actually did what Fine Gael told me, which is really annoying, which is I upskilled. Which is so annoying,
It's hard to downskill, though, in all fairness. It is difficult to downskill. Maybe a blow to the head is the only way you go about it, but
it's the only way. Yeah. But the only way to downskill was if I joined Fine Gael. And told people how, just work harder, shop around, buy you'll eventually get it as long as you get married and you both work every day and make 80 grand. It's a weird world that we live in. But so lockdown came along, so I learned this thing called Final Cut, which is where I was able to make documentaries. I got a green screen, I did all that, and I made 4 documentaries, and 2 of them were The Murder of Wolfe Tone, and the other 2 were The Murder of Michael Collins. And so when we came out of lockdown, I had these 2 shows ready, and I sold them online, and I sold them for a tenner, and brilliantly, luckily, I sold a good few thousand, and it meant I had money coming in during lockdown, because 18 grand a year is not great, Tom.
No, not especially when you want to live in Dublin.
No, let's not. No, especially. So I made these, they did well, and then I thought, geez, I've already made shows. So I narrowed it down to 90 minutes, and I have this show, The Murder of Michael Collins, started touring it in March in Dublin, and the 2nd of March I did it in the Pearse Centre, which is brilliant theatre behind in the house where Patrick Pearse grew up on Pearse Street. I'm doing it there again in August. Go to my website, paddycullivan.com. But I'm doing 2 nights, the anniversary, 22nd of August of the death of Collins, and the 23rd. I'm in Bandon on the 21st of August, would you believe, where I could get shot myself.
Yeah.
Collins, because I'm actually there where he was very near to where he was killed. But I did on the 2nd of March. It was brilliant. Everybody came, full house. No one had seen each other in 2 years. Everyone was practically licking each other.
Class.
Everyone was licking each other with happiness, and we all got COVID for the next 10 days.
Good.
Yes, good. So I had to postpone a bunch of shows, but then I went to London. I went to the Hammersmith, to the ICC. I sold 2 nights out there. I did Birmingham, I did Newcastle. So the tour's been a sellout success. And it's the year of the centenary of Collins' death. So there's a lot of interest in it, but it's a bit more like the Tom Crean show. It's a kind of show that'll run and run, because
of course
it's like the JFK death. It's just, people will never stop wondering what the hell happened. It's so mysterious. It's so strange. It's even weirder than JFK's death. So I've been getting great crowds. Second leg starts in August in through September, and it's going really well.
That is, I love hearing that. I love hearing that. Like, and it just, I mean, you probably didn't do it to knowing that the centenary or to tie it in.
Oh no, I knew, Tom. I knew.
Oh yeah, I know.
I'm an absolutely opportunistic.
I was saying, here he is, just a lucky, humble guy, and all of a sudden he's like, no, let's just get it out of the way, Tom. Early doors. I did. I'm a capitalist savage, and I am a savage. Yeah. No, but here's what the funny thing I did.
what I realized, the last time I talked to you, I was doing these things called the 10 Dark Secrets of 1798, and the 10
Which
Dark
is
Secrets.
amazing, by the way.
They were great, but I took one dark secret, which is the death of Michael Collins, and I just made an entire show about it. And it's much better because you're bringing people on a journey. It's like a theatrical narrative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like going beginning, middle, end. And it's much better than an episodic thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And and the bizarre thing is because the whole thing, and I know I told you I was getting away from comedy, but because the whole thing is so farcical, it's full of laughs. It's full of absolutely mad laughs. So it's basically a comedy show. It's very serious at points. It's very emotional at points because I love Michael Collins and I think what happened to him was a travesty. But Jesus, it's so bizarre what went on that there's joke after joke after joke in the show. So, I mean, there's people in London laughing in the most inappropriate places. And I said, guys, that wasn't even meant to be a joke. You know what I mean? But because the cover-up is so bizarre, because what happened at the assassination is so bizarre, because what the papers came out with is so bizarre, like Collins saying 4 different sentences as last words, even though he died in a tenth of a second.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all this stuff. He was like The Walking Dead where someone chopped his head off and his mouth kept moving. You know what I mean? And it's a really weird story.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it brilliant though that you were able to extrapolate? Because I remember that was what, like, the one, and I'm not, no criticism, but of the 1798, and I was drinking. It was a lot for me to take on board. Info, even though it was brilliant, but I was like, I need to watch that again. I need to watch that again. And me, Paddy, go again, play it again, because it was just there was a lot in it. Like,
yeah, there is. Yeah. I think when you have one story about one person, it's a bit like the Tom Green thing, and the next one I'm going to do is a Murder Wolf Tone. Michael Collins is more like JFK. Wolf Tone's more like Jeffrey Epstein, and murdered in prison. Murdered in prison. You see, people don't like this. People don't like it because you're saying murder. And when I came out with murder, Michael Collins, well, even Republicans were saying to me, "How dare you? He died a legitimate target in a civil war." I said, "Well, I've gone into it, lads, and I've actually gone into it. Like Republicans are more annoyed at me about this than Free Staters are, you know."
But it's not like he got caught in a gunfight, like in the middle of a battle. He was shot, traveling. It was a murder. It was an assassination, but it was a murder.
Well, yeah, but here's the weird thing, Tom. 25 people go in as his bodyguard, right? Into a valley. He's attacked by about 5 people with inferior arms.
Yep.
The 25 bodyguards don't put him into the armored car. He ends up 50 yards away from the armored car for some reason. He's shot in the head and they bring him back dead. And not one of them or any of the attack party receives any serious wound or injury. Nobody else dies. Not only that, they get him back. There's an autopsy, but the autopsy is burnt in 1932. There's no death cert. Michael Collins doesn't even have a death cert. There's no inquest. There's no inquiry. I mean, we have nothing. The guy who was sitting next to him in the car, Emmett Dalton, bans all inquiries into deaths in West Cork the month later. The car he was traveling in ends up in Kenya a month later. What? There's no evidence. There's no forensic evidence, no ballistic evidence. There's no bullets. There's no guns. There's nothing. It's like a ghost event. And this is why the story is so mysterious. And when I bring people through it, by the end of it, they're like, oh my God, it is a murder. Because why would you cover it up if it wasn't?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's really dark.
Cillian Murphy has a lot to answer for. I mean, it was a cracking shot from that distance, in all fairness.
That wasn't Cillian Murphy. No, as I say in the thing, I show the official history. I show where Neil Jordan has them parking conveniently on the bend.
Yeah.
The actual ambush site was the length of Patrick Street in Cork, it was half a mile long. But the convenient people park on a bend, and Jonathan Rhys-Myers puts up the gun.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, Jonathan Rhys-Myers pulls up the gun and ruins another movie.
You see, you can't resist it. Comedy's like crack, man. You could have gone. I guarantee you could have written that as straight as an iron. And if you handed it to me and I read it over and I'd hand it back, gone, Paddy, you are going to absolutely molest this with comedy. Even though it's one of the darkest things you could talk about, murder, like, but at the same time, you won't be able to resist it at every turn.
I can't help it. There's a terrible moment where at the funeral of Collins, Lady Lavery dresses in widow's weeds like she's his wife, pushes herself to the front, jumps onto the coffin and starts wailing and crying as they're lowering the coffin into the grave. And a bunch of Free State soldiers have to pull her off the grave and say, would you fuck off, please? Because poor Kitty Kiernan's 2 rows back, right? And she's watching this take place, right? She's Michael Collins' girlfriend. She was meant to be married to him on the 22nd of August, the day he was shot at Bailnablaw, but he postponed the wedding so that he could go down and make peace with the anti-treaty side. And I couldn't resist the line, Tom. So we dodged that bullet.
And the thing is, I can tell people here right now, they're like, you're not burning any material here. There's 90 minutes of this.
There's a lot more.
I can guarantee at every corner there'll be something going, there's
a lot more. And you know something, it's a savage story, but when I say that, the first time I did that was at Mahony's of Watergrass Hill, right? It was 22nd of August 2021, I think. And that was the first time I did the Collins show. And half the crowd roared laughing when I said, so he dodged that bullet. And I said, that's all the single people laughing. And the fella roared up from the crowd and goes, no, it's the married ones. So from then on, I changed the line after to, so that's all the married people laughing. The single people still have hope. Let me give you a bit of advice, single people. Don't have hope.
Isn't that great? I love that about the organic. Like you can have a room of writers sitting around writing that show impeccably, but it took a gang of Cork people to give you a perfect moment. Like, you know what I mean? To turn and people don't realize that when I've done like theater shows and stuff, I'm like, and they get surprised that, you know, I'm hot to trot, get, you know, in, and comedy is fire, and it takes them 3, 4, 5 nights of the run because they haven't acted or been on a stage in maybe 3, 4 months. I'm like, man, I just did 5 nights this week telling dick jokes. I'm, you know, the engine's hot. So at every hand's turn, you're ready, and they can't grasp that. But that's where you organically build the shows in the same sense. Like by the time you're there, you go, well, that's going in. That's
yeah, exactly. No, sure. Listen, the show changed immeasurably from then on. So I was, you know, that line came into it, and I changed it instantly. Then I had the follow-up line then, and you know yourself, you go around and you're doing like night after night after night, and you're adding and adding and adding, and you come up with another line. There was another line I come up with where the thing with the Collins assassination is you get a whole. So basically, I figured out that the only people who saw what happened at Bailnablaw are people who weren't there. And the only people who didn't see anything that happened at Bailnablaw were the people who were actually there, right? So what happens is over time you get this bunch of self-aggrandizing thing where like 200, it goes from like 7 people to 200 fellas, and there's fellas from Kerry saying they did it, and there's fellas from Waterford. I saw the big man fall. I saw it happen. Like it just builds up like this mythic thing, you know? And I said, you know, it's a bit like, and then I said, it's a bit like the amount of people who were carrying Connolly's stretcher in the GPO, which at the last count numbered 75, right? And that got a laugh, right? And then just in one of the gigs I went, that's not carrying a stretcher, that's crowd surfing, right? And then I just added that in, and then it stayed in the show. You kind of know what I mean? So somebody talked about writing the show as you go, or state, you know, there's a phrase for it where the show changes as you go on. You know, and it's weird that the thing that came to the fore as I'm doing the whole thing, because up to this point I thought it was important, this was important, and that was important, and the most important thing is there's zero evidence anywhere of anything, and that has come to the fore as the big thing, and it's changed the show as it's gone on. I've not lost laughs, I've added laughs, but also this theme has come through, which is these are all talking through your hat. Everything is hearsay, everything is secondhand information. Everything is whispers. Everything is he said, she said, which is how we do everything in Ireland.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? The more I think about it, I mean, why, you know what? You should put it out on every platform, like put it out in the audio sense as well, because I just did a 10-hour podcast on the Rothschilds at the weekend with those conspiracy guys.
Oh, brilliant.
And yeah, I mean, we were just shy of the 10-hour mark by the time we were just these wide-eyed, just going, okay, we'll wrap it there. But it ended with, we all got off the fence and we finished. I won't reveal how it went, but it came very conclusive how we all were at the end. But the more what you're saying, because there's so much interest, why, you know, there's an audio book as well to be, you know, there's an audio show to be done in it as well, just reading out and chiming in with your humor as well, even if it was in a room by yourself, just
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, like, weird things happen along the way. So I still have the online shows for sale at paddycullivan.com. You can just buy it for a tenner and you'll get those online shows. They've consistently remained on sale. I sell a couple every day,
Brilliant.
which is amazing, a tenner a pop. And then, you know, in Derry, for instance, in the Playhouse, amazing theatre, they decided to not just have it live, but also broadcast it to the world. So you could buy tickets online. So people in America, Germany, and everywhere else were watching it. And we got the income from that as well. So this whole new thing since COVID that I think are good in terms of performing live. And sort of like, for instance, a pal of mine is Erskine Childers. He's actually the fourth Erskine Childers in a row, helped me greatly with the show. But he was able to watch it in Boston when it was doing the live in Derry. So the COVID has brought some benefits and made us a bit more technologically savvy and aware. You know what I mean? So that we can actually get our stuff out there in a far bigger way. You know, I would love to bring it to Netflix and stuff like that, but you know, I was watching Bill Burr there as well, talking to Joe Rogan. I thought that was very interesting about how he said, you know, it's better if you own like 100% of 20 sales than 1% of 200,000. You know, something like that. But he was kind of right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how I'm looking at it, where it's a cottage industry, it's a growth thing. And hopefully someday someone says, here's £1 million. Can we take this off your hands? And I go, no problemo.
Yeah.
Just don't cast Julia Roberts as Kitty Kiernan. Thank you.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I know.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it would float well. It would float well for probably an interesting, like to give you a context. I grew up with a picture of Liam Lynch over my bed.
Oh yeah.
Other kids had, you know, Ryan Giggs on the wall. Not in my house.
No. I'm a Liam Lynch fan. You know, a lot of people diss him. You know, I think he's just one of those. It's weird. He features a lot at the start of the show. There's a whole part of the Collins story which is weird. Everyone forgets he was working with Liam Lynch in the first half of 2022 to invade the North. They were working together and sending arms up the North from the forecourt. So they were all in cahoots.
Yeah.
You know, so Lynch, the minute the forecourt is bombed, Lynch is actually in the Clarence Hotel because he had split from the IRA. He heads down to Houston Station and he's caught by Owen O'Duffy, who stops him and says, what are you doing? He says, oh, I think he's all mad and I'm heading away down to Limerick. And Owen O'Duffy, because he's an idiot, he's the kind of fella my granny would say would put your post in a pump. He lets him go. Liam Lynch gets down to Limerick, walks out onto the platform, declares for the Republic, and they've just let go the leader of the anti-treaty IRA for the next 10 months. Do you know what I mean? But the funny thing is, he knew nothing about what happened with Collins. It's very strange. He keeps saying like, oh, they planned it and he did this and he did that. When the final report came in from Liam Deasy on the 24th of August, said, we've just learned of the death of Michael Collins. And all Liam Lynch is doing, giving out saying, you didn't get the armored car. We wanted the bleeding armored car. Like, so they really have no idea what's happened. You know what I mean? The attackers had no idea. They met up in the Metropole Hotel in 1964 and said, we didn't see anything. The only fellas, as I told you, who saw it, one fella whose glasses are so thick, he looks like Mr. Magoo should have gone to Specsavers. He doesn't look like he would have seen much. And he's the witness they based Sonny O'Neill on, every single one of them.
That's bizarre. Amazing that they picked the blindest fucker. You're like, blindest he'll do.
Mr. Magoo, yeah, he's the one. Yeah, pick that guy who looks like 2 Guinness bottles on his eyes.
I won't ask you for, or maybe you don't give it away in the show. Maybe you do or you don't. But do you have any suspicions yourself? If I was to push you to get off the fence on it, like, are you just going, meh, don't know?
I have a thing called conclusion in the show.
Say no more then.
But it's got a question mark. It's got a question mark, and it's worth it because I don't want to damn anybody, because everything is guesswork with this. Everything, but you have to look at the weight of it. The weight of evidence in the Collins story is not evidence because there isn't any. The weight of the Collins story is why the cover up.
Right. Yeah.
Why would you cover up something that if it was the most natural thing in the world? So there's something rotten in the state of Denmark or Primark or Ireland.
It must be class, but that first night, even though you did all get COVID and whatnot, like, but back gigging again, it's something else. And now you're not only just back gigging, you're back selling out shows. Like,
I know live audience is just stunning. I mean, London was incredible. I have to say, 2 nights in Hammersmith.
I'd say so.
Yeah, and I tell you one thing, they're a machine. The Irish Cultural Centre in Hammersmith, they just sold the damn thing out for 2 nights. They were even going to go for a matinee, and I said, please don't, I'm exhausted. Like it's hard enough doing one in a day. And there was other places. I did Listowel, and they brought like 2 schools in. I had to do 2 shows that day and the one that night. So schools are coming to the show as well, which is amazing, you know. I've done the maddest venues, and then I'm kind of all over the place, and in the places that I couldn't do, like a lot of the art centers, I feel very bad for them because if they've been messed up by COVID completely. You know what I mean? Like, they're still having to put in shows they delayed in 2020. So everything I'm doing is kind of staggered. But I'm doing places like Kilkenny, the Watergate, the Riverbank in Newbridge, the Presentation Theatre in Wexford, and places like Limerick, the Bell Table. So I haven't got to Limerick yet. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, it's going everywhere. And the North, of course, Belfast sold out, Downpatrick sold out. Way more interested in history than the South, of course. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know that too, and the fact that I find up the North they have a culture of going to the theatre. Do you know what I mean? Like any show I've ever done up there, it's like my first leg of, or the first night of my show Clattered, the stand-up show I started in Belfast. People are going, what the would you not start to us? No. And it like that sold like hotcakes. And you're
amazing.
Of course it did. Driving all the way to Belfast, but it made sense. Not a bother.
But I mean, I did the Black Box on a Monday, 200 people. I sold out the Derry Playhouse. Denver's, we did 2 nights and they had dinner and everything. And so I'm back in Denver's again. This is an amazing little venue in Downpatrick. It's about a 60, 70 seater. Now it would fit 100, but he loves having kind of spread out tables and cabaret style. And I'm telling you, it's people don't know how sophisticated the North is. They really have a network, first of all, of theaters and arts, and everybody goes. Everybody.
Like I remember opening for Delamere one night, and it was, I can't remember the name of the village. I call it a village. I'm sure it's a town, but we're talking one street lamp. It was bleak when you pull up, and it was like a Tuesday night or something.
Maybe it was bleak. If it was that bleak, it was bleak. Sorry, go on.
But you pull up and it's outside the theatre. I'm like, it looks fairly newish. Yeah, okay. You walk in, state-of-the-art theatre, 400-seater, sold out on a Tuesday night.
Wow.
Now, that's not to say Delamere couldn't do it anyway, but at the same time, you're going, if this wouldn't work anywhere down the south.
No.
The whole county of Tipperary has almost no theatres. Like, and it's a huge county. Like,
Well, I tell you, I had an incredible night in Nina, though. I have to say, the Nina Arts Centre was absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I never knew what a vibe Nina had. Nina, by the way, is where Sonny O'Neill, one of the suspects, lived and died on the main street. But fantastic town, because I didn't know much about Tip Towns. I haven't been to a bar Tip Town, but Nina was a fantastic, great show, great sold out crowd. And then we went to a place called Rocky's next door, and it was phenomenal. Great music and a really old school bar, you know.
Yeah, Nina's. The thing is, they kind of do themselves a little bit of an injustice. It's it is a huge county, and it was split in 2 up until recently. But bizarrely, I did 2 nights in a brand new pub in a village called Cloheen, which will work for you all day long.
Oh, great!
And it's like it holds packed, cannot fit another, and they're all only because they're large men. You probably get 100 in, but 75 of these size men, like monsters, like. But the 2 nights, I remember the woman, she rang me, she says, so we'll put on 2 nights. I went, Era, we'll go 1. She said, no, it's fine, we'll put on 2 nights.
Wow.
And I went, all right. And I rang her like 3 or 4 days later. I was like, you haven't asked for a post, you've asked. Well, they're nearly sold out.
Wow.
Oh, Christ almighty. And to hear like the organic, untainted kind of, we have our favorite comedian. They didn't know me. They didn't know anything about to do with stand-up. They didn't, nothing.
No.
These are blue-collar people who, they work 60-hour weeks. And yet they probably can afford to stay. They're probably one of the few people who could afford to stay a couple of nights in Dublin, but they haven't the time. Do you know what I mean? You bring it to them.
I love bringing it to them because, funny enough, Dublin is the one that's almost hardest to sell.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on. But I run them myself. They're my own theatre things. I run them on Eventbrite and stuff like that, and they're starting to sell great now. And I sold the 2 nights, which is only a 70-seater, but like Belfast, it's like a machine. It's just sold out, and you get there and like the audience was 200, and there was about 70. I'd say there was 70 lads who were involved. Let's just put it that way. Back in the day. And just as the show was starting, a phone rang, and it was Armored Cars and Tanks and Guns was the ringtone. And I was like, lads, like, we have to try and welcome, for United Ireland. Could you not put on Ireland's Call, on your phone? Ireland's Call. No. But no, they would never do that. But at one point, I'm talking about the assassination of Henry Wilson, which was a very important moment that started the Irish Civil War.
Yeah.
Where he was the highest ranking general in the British Army. He shot on the streets of London in 22nd of June 1922. 6 days later, the Civil War starts because the Brits say, we'll invade the Four Courts if you don't, to Michael Collins. And but it's always been mysterious who ordered the killing of Wilson. And people say, oh, it was Collins, and then other people say, oh, it was the anti-treaty IRA. And then other people say, oh no, it's an old order from like a year ago. An old order. I was like, and I just went, what? Oh, an old order. Like, you could
get lost down the back of the fucking sofa. What, like?
Exactly. Yeah, you could ruin a whole peace process if you just carried out orders that were given to you a year ago. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I turn around, and that's not how orders work, is it, lads? And they all went, no, it's not. No. Oh, fuck! I've just told the West Belfast Brigade their business. No, it was funny. It was great crack. You know what I mean? And they're funny. I mean, that's to go to Belfast, a place that might think that Michael Collins is the kind of guy who left them behind. Do you know what I mean? Or was part of the Free State. And they wanted to learn, and they wanted to know the truth, that he really was a true Republican, and he was going to try and invade the North as late as July, which is bizarre. And people don't know this history because Fine Gael want you to think that Collins was going to retire with Kitty Kiernan to the Burnaby and Greystones and live out the life of an ex-World Economic Forum banker type.
Which is what the Burnaby still is.
Yeah, it's nothing could be further from the truth. Collins really was the Martin McGuinness of his day. He had the ballot box in one hand and the Armalite in the other.
Yeah.
He was going to use both of them, and he was using both of them, which is what I think the Brits could not find tenable. They couldn't fathom this guy. This is the only guy that ever got them to the negotiating table, and he's still fighting them all the way through.
Well, when you look at it, I mean, look, they've given back lands, amicably, and it's all Prince Charles shaking hands and whatnot, and Rihanna got the Barbados back, I think, whatever. But it's all done in such a lovely, amicable way. But when you look at it, I mean, who else fought him? You know what I mean? Like, who else fought him with, to cause such a ruckus?
Well, it's more than that. It's that he took their backyard.
Yeah.
It's all right if it's Barbados. It's all right if it's Guam. It's all right if it's Egypt or Sudan or whatever. But when the fella takes 26 counties off you, that's gotta hurt. That's gotta hurt.
It's gotta sting.
Yeah.
And you hang on to the fucking shed. You know what I mean? Or you get the patio. That's what you got. You're like, no.
Exactly. And I mean, and look, and the other thing is, look, I'm weird now because having gone through the whole thing, I'm anti-treaty like yourself. Like we'd be the Liam Lynch side of things too. But on a point of principle, I see that, and I try and explain to people. A lot of people say, oh, why did the IRA not just sign the treaty and do it, and then eventually they could get what they wanted? Remember, these were religious men. My granddad was a religious man. So they took an oath to the Republic. So now this new constitution was saying that they need to take an oath to the king.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the treaty. The problem is not partition. They were going to deal with that militarily. That's why they had no problem with partition, because they were just going, we're going to invade you in a while. Don't worry about that. Once we get our big army and all of this. I mean, everyone says it would have been a bloodbath. We just kicked the bloodbath down the road to the 70s. But the oath was the real problem, because these guys had just sworn an oath to the Republic. How can you change that? You'd be an oath breaker. And for religious guys like this, that's the end. I'm sorry, we're not doing it. And that's why the IRA, none of the IRA basically joined the Free State Army. About 3,000 fellas did. And they were paid very handsomely. But the rest of them had sworn oath to the Republic. And if you're going to join the National Army, you have to swear an oath of allegiance to the king. Just not going to happen.
No.
Not going to happen. So the Free State Army that took out the IRA of 1922 and 23 was 58,000 people. 30,000 of them were ex-British Army, 3,000 were ex-IRA, and the rest of them were conscripts. So it was a mercenary army.
Yeah.
Very strange time. And people don't know this either. They think it was brother against brother. It wasn't really. It was a big fat army funded by the Brits, crushed the IRA, and that was the end of the Civil War. But I want people to understand Collins better. I want them to understand that he was trying to play both sides. He was trying to do something. And because he was being sophisticated, just like everyone who tries to be sophisticated in Ireland, they took him out.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose he took the big bite of the cake. and was coming back for afters. But to do that, you got to put on the uniform, don't you, for a while? Like,
that's it. And I mean, even when the Civil War started, you see, Churchill allowed him to as many troops as he wanted. Remember, the National Army could only ever be 4,000 strong. So when the Civil War starts, Churchill gives him like 35,000. So he's up to 35 by August 2022. And he says to W.T. Cosgrave, Jesus, great, we have this big army. It gives us a chance in our future dealings with Britain and the Northeast. He's already planning to invade the North with the army.
Yeah.
And so the guy was dangerous. He was so dangerous to everybody, especially the Free State lads who just had their nice pensionable jobs. They were sitting in the cabinet going, this is great. Geez, we have Ireland, so we're 26 county Catholic place. What the fuck is this guy doing? What are you talking about invading the North for?
Everything was going lovely.
Everything was great. I have my pension. If you do this shit, I'm back in a safe house, living in a bog for 7 years, shaving by a river with cold water. They don't want to go back. He's got to be taken out. He's got to be taken out. That's why Collins is taken out. Because everybody hates him. Everybody hates him as that.
I love you. You tweeted the other day. I was so stingy, but it's such a passive. It was so passive aggressive. It was beautiful. It was of the tower. Your man Jamie Bryson or whatever his name, had to put a picture going, oh, it's the best towers, tower of fucking pallets, like
best bonfire, yeah.
And you were for the bonfire for the 12th, and you this is gorgeous, honestly, and it was basically your tweet was around how Irish it was. How beautifully Celtic and Irish it was, harks back to how we built everything circular back in the day. It was just
what I said to Jamie Bryson about the beautiful circular towers of Belfast at 12th of July. I said, what I love about this is it brings our ancient Celtic links to the fore. Our Gaelic ancestors loved to build in a circular fashion, from Iron Age ring forts to cranobes. These new constructions are the most Irish of edifices, expressing our deeply inherent Irishness. Well done.
But you have to believe that old shite is dying off a cliff. Like, anybody that's coming to my shows and I mean, the comedy scene in the North at the minute is it's unparalleled in the world right now, I would argue, because Kevin Hart just did 20 nights in Belfast between comedy clubs, the Ulster Hall and the SSE Arena. Wow. And every lad that's up there is just, once they start comedy and they're doing it a couple of years, they're selling out. Like, they're just selling out. And the standard is good too, to like they all gig on a regular basis and stuff, but there's never a vibe you get. Like, anybody going to comedy sure as shit doesn't care, about burning fucking pallets on the 11th.
But I think, look, I mean, it's everywhere. The younger generation, because I'm talking to everybody, because I'm also involved in trying to unite the country. I'm involved with a bunch of people called Ireland's Future, and we're just it's like a civic group that's just trying to, let's work this out, because it's going to happen. So we better just figure out the economics of it, figure out the arrangements of it. I mean, the southern establishment are going to be as unhappy with United Ireland as the northern one.
Feathers are going to be ruffled.
Yeah, because one of the things I point out is the same 60 square meter red brick house in Falls Road compared to the same red brick house in Ranelagh. One is 500 grand and one is 100 grand. So that all you have to say to unions is, do you want your property to quadruple overnight? Because it will. But the only other thing you say is to the south, well, maybe your property will half in price.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll all balance out. Maybe we'll have a normal society. Maybe it'll all teeter on the brink. But any Protestant I've talked to in the North, young or old, not one of them. All of them are thinking about it. All of them have their Irish passports. Every single one of them. So they can send the kids in Erasmus and they can travel Europe happily and don't have to be in the idiot line with the rest of the Brexit Brits. So there's a whole middle class Ulster, and there's a whole, and more than that, and who know the game. This is all just for show.
Yeah.
And I think what they're doing is manipulating people. And it's hard to watch young people being kind of dragged into that, and the effigies and the flags and all that. And when they get the flag the wrong way around, so it's the Ivory Coast and all the rest. But nobody's really thinking about that. Nobody's really thinking about it. Everyone is thinking, like, there was an interesting woman who was on one of the RT shows. She's saying, look, as long as there's a good health service, I don't care.
There you go.
I mean, look, a woman, at one of my shows in Belfast, the poor woman had a seizure, and she was on, in the middle, and I was just near the end of the first half. And at the first point, I thought, Jesus, is it that bad? My show. And
or that good.
Or that good. Yeah.
I'm an egomaniac. That's where I'd go. To be honest, that's where I'd go in my head.
I like that. It's that turnaround pivot. But she was on the ground for a while, and then they brought her into the hall, and I could get on with the show. Not that I selfishly wanted to, but you know.
Yeah, you did. It's fine.
You're
talking to another day. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And it took 4 hours for the ambulance to get there.
What?
And the Royal Victoria Hospital is 5 minutes away. So, for all that we're told about the Northern Health Service and the British Health Service, I asked everyone that night, what's going on? They were saying COVID has destroyed it. Just like the airports, they fired everybody, they got rid of everyone, they used it as an opportunity. A lot of institutions in the South have done the same, firing everybody and going, off you go now. And now when everything's back, it's a basket case. So United Ireland's a huge opportunity to just reset the dial, get everything right. And even every Northern prod knows that's the case, because they know that it's a one-way ticket the other way. Do you know what I mean? With Brexit Britain and the basket casery of all of that. You know what I mean? And of course, sure, when politics takes place in United Ireland, they'll have 15% of the power.
There you go.
In Britain, they've like 0.5%.
Yeah. It is, and that's the vibe I get up. Anybody I talk to, they don't actually call themselves Northern Irish. Just call them Irish.
Yeah.
It's too fucking long. What the fuck? Like we all laugh at the same shit. Do you know what I mean?
And I like a good orange parade. I'll tell you why. Because I like historical reenactments, and at least they're actually remembering a bit of history. As opposed to the fucking Irish parades on St. Patrick's Day. Ooh, destiny, fantasy. You know, like big fucking Magnus heads and what's this bollocks?
Yeah, what? In all fairness, I get that kind of shit. I go, that was fine in the 90s, lads, when we were trying to be all arty and get a ball of fucking money off Europe and all the rest. But they don't give a fuck about us anymore and our artiness, so we may as well go back to reenacting stuff.
Reenacting. I loved it because when the St. Patrick's Day parades were on, any of the official ones were all like, had things like Danu, and fantasy and illusion. And all of this kind of like, Tiernan. Hibernia, yeah. Whereas the local ones that the people themselves put together, everyone was in volunteer uniforms with rifles shooting shit. Like in Rossmuck, they had a 60-foot high Patrick Pearse with a massive rifle. And then someone reenacting Joan Burton falling out of the boat into the thing during the water charges. That's what I like. I like local shit. You know what I mean?
They don't give a shit in the locals because they'll go straight after the immediate thing, like the one with the digger digging through fucking Lidl that time that we, during the snow. It's like, well, every parish had one of those. It's like,
sure, I remember in Cavan in the 80s, there was two floats in one after the other in the St. Patrick's Day parade, and one was the animal sanctuary and the kind of be good to animals and stuff, and the petting zoo, and then the next was the gun club and all these pelts of dead animals and fellas with rifles, the legally held arms,
because I love, because since moving back to Tipperary, I've really now it has. I mean, it's a very modern place around here now, but at the same time, you still get a vibe that you can see how you would not push these people, because in urban environments, you can just go, well, I'm just going to move the goalposts on you, and we're just going to make your road one way, so either you're on board or not.
Yeah.
But here you can control the narrative around here because you're in rural Ireland.
Yeah.
And you can see by the way even you speak to people that go, like to an outsider coming in, you go, rural people they're so relaxed and calm. They move at just their own pace. It's not because they're relaxed and calm, it's because fuck you. That's why.
Yeah.
We'll move it. I remember the very first time I was down here, the very first day, the house we were renting at the beginning, I went to order oil, as you do. Like I said, I'd order oil.
Yeah.
And the phone rang like 15 times, and your man answered, not, this is Paddy of Cullivan's Oil. He answered and went, well, I was there with my Dublin head and my cord out, ready to give him my PIN number or even to give him my cord. And the guy just completely pulled the legs from under me.
Yeah.
But in that moment, it was like, that's how you disarm somebody. It's like, and I wanted to order the oil. I said, will I give you the address? I should go on. So gave him the address, and then he went, now where are you?
Yeah. Where are you actually?
Yeah, and
fuck
like
the
that.
Air code.
Oh, fuck anything. Yeah. Like I had to tell him whose house it was and who had the field before you. I actually used to belong to my grandfather. And I swear to God, this guy, it was the freakiest thing. Again, moving at their own pace.
Yeah.
I would say 14 minutes later, this ginormous human knocked on the back kitchen window. I went, that's full now. I went, what?
Yeah.
And walked away without payment. Nobody took payment for a month. A month
no,
until.
Listen, Tom, I just got the oil filled in Donegal in the house, right? 975 quid. Lovely. Thanks, Joe Biden. Oh, sorry, Vladimir Putin, whoever we're entertaining at the moment. But like I just text them and they don't even get back. And you get up there, the thing's full, and there's a receipt just in the post box. And you ring up them and you pay them when you want. And like I remember when I first went up to Donegal, there was an old boiler in the garden. It was really heavy, and I was trying to get it up into a skip, you know.
Yeah.
And I was trying to slide it onto a long piece of wood, and then kind of use the weight, the fulcrum of the weight, to pull up the thing and push it into the. And my neighbor Hugo comes and goes, "What are you doing there?" I said, "I'm trying to use the principle of Archimedes, you know, the principle of
the moments of the turn about the
you know, to try and use the fulcrum and the thing to disperse the dispersal of weight and bollocks, right?" He comes up like 2 minutes later with a massive digger with a huge claw on it, picks up the fucking thing, plops it into the fucking thing, and goes, "Archimedes shite. That's the digger." Archimedes shite. That's the digger. Because I can tell you that the Greens, the way they think about it, everyone should be a plow, you know, with a hand-driven plow, with a horse-drawn plow. The minute fucking hydraulics came along, farmers went, "This is it. We can do what we want now. We can terraform." You know, they have no interest in like Tweed growing salads on their windowsills and all this shit. Do you know what I mean? These guys want machinery, and they want to change the world around them with machinery, and they're right, because that's how we survive. You know,
it's along with the opposable thumbs. You're like, this is why we're here, lads. Ryan, you brought the bike in the back of your ministerial car down to fucking Galway to drive it down by the Spanish Arch, and then you put it back into fucking yoke and drove had a driver drive you back to it. You know.
By the way, I'll say something controversial here. A bike is a Victorian concept. It's really just an exercise mode, because once electric cars come along, I don't want to see a single bike lane anywhere.
There you go.
You can buy a Peloton or a cycle around your garden, but you're not taking up any more road, because supposedly once the electric car comes along, we don't need to worry about emissions and all the rest of it. So you can fuck the bike in the river.
Wow. Go. Do you know how many savages are going to come after us now? And I love it.
I'm so sorry.
No, there's no apology needed. But heaven forbid, like Twitter has an amazing.
What if the world turned? What if society turned and said, we have to make skateboard lanes now, because skateboards are so cheap to make, and they're a faster way of getting to work. So and cars are bad. So there's a full skateboard lane here for you. I'd be like, no, that's your do. That's what you want to do, right? Build a train, but forget about the skateboards and the bikes. If I see one more greenway, what is it with greenways, man? The technology that comes right after train travel is walking. Brilliant. Well done.
I know. Brilliant. Jesus Christ. And I mean, you put that up on Twitter, and the vehement, everybody wants to be part of a gang, but the cycling gang, whatever it is, they're so vehement about being able to cycle wherever and however they want.
Do you know what the best thing to ever do with a greenway would be? You put down a thing called a bunch of sleepers. Then you put these iron things called tracks along it.
Yeah.
And then you return them to being train lines, which is what they were. We had 5,000 miles of train in Ireland, and by the 1960s, there was 1,000 left.
Isn't that hilarious if we were all able to use a proper public transport? And what would that do for taking cars off the road? I don't know. It's just maybe an idea. I don't know.
Huge idea, because and they got rid of it. And the reason they got rid of the trains was because they figured out that, oh, geez, if everyone owns a car, we can tax them. And then they have to pay insurance. And then they have to keep replacing bits of the car. And it's all their responsibility. Whereas if we have trains, it's our responsibility. And all they have to do is pay for it. So I could have had a dart now. If we lived in a normal society, there'd be a dart from Letterkenny up to Cashel-Nagore, and I'd have a 1 mile walk to the gaff in Donegal. But now it's an Airbnb thing and a greenway, which is great. But
I give an example. I was over. You would so suit. I'm going to get Gordo to tie up with you if you have time to go to those Conspiracy Guys episodes, because this, oh my God, you would love. He's in Mayo, so you wouldn't have too far off the beaten track. But we what was I? What you were talking about? God, it was about the naivety of us years ago, and thinking that all that happened on the planet was Irish were doing it right and everything. And I remember back when we had money in the construction industry, we're a gang of us lads, managers, site managers and site civil engineers, we all decided to go skiing. Oh, wow. And we'd gone, this is like a third year, but we said we'd go to a place in Austria called Zellamsee. And the only way we could figure to get there was to fly to Munich, rent a car, a 4x4, and drive in the snow in Germany over to Austria, park it up for the week, paying the rent on this car, and then drive it back again. The 6 or 7 degree, we all had degrees in, to whatever level, but smart enough blokes to a degree. But when we got to Munich and we'd already paid for the car, and walking through Munich airport, the train station was downstairs, and guess where a train went directly to? Yeah. 5 or 6 dickheads all looking at each other going, we should just get back in the fucking plane and go home.
I know.
And we drove like furious, just drove in a huff. A lot of us going, we're paying for this bucket of shit to drive in this white fucking fluffy shit. We want to ski on this and drink for the week. It's not going to do 1 fucking inch, let alone a mile for the whole week. For
Tom, even Britain, like I went from Newcastle to London in 2.5 hours. That's the same length as Cork to Belfast. This is not a high-speed train. It just runs properly.
Yeah.
And the Cork to Belfast would take you 6 hours. Do you know what I mean? And just the way we got rid of infrastructure and stuff like that, I think we can do this better. And then we have to go and rebuild it all. Like the trams of Dublin. When Paddy Cosgrave left Ireland for Lisbon, it's because when you land in Lisbon, there's a train that brings you directly into the conference centre where he was having the Web Summit, right? Now, I have an old map of the Dublin tram service. You used to be able to get a tram that went into the RDS, into the concert hall.
Oh, yeah.
And left you off there. I mean, incredible Victorian stuff that we just ripped up and tore up because tarmac Adam, private insurance, tax vehicle, Dunlop tires, whatever the hell. Do you know what I mean? I mean, everything here, everyone's on the make in Ireland. It was all on the make, and we did everything just for profit and just for individual profit. You know what I mean? But at least we were being robbed by our own, Tom. That's the main thing.
Right, you've got a gig to go to and all the rest of it, or I don't know, maybe you're getting a massage. I asked you this on the last one at the very end, and I you kind of half answered it anyway. I think that your premonition from the last podcast is right. We're going to be united when, do you think?
Oh, I'd like to think 2030. But
perfect.
I think 2030 is reasonable enough. But at the moment, I think the priority is more to not to convince, but just to lay it out. That's why I'm working in that. I'm going to do a show as well on unity and do an hour-long show. It starts with a unionist taking a holiday in Dublin for the first time in his life, and then walking around it and realizing, Jesus, this is more British than Belfast.
Yeah.
And he goes around and finds all the British things about, the Royal Dublin Society, the Royal Hibernian Academy, the Royal College of Surgeons. Everything has royal in front of it in Dublin.
Yeah. The RDS. Yeah.
All that crack. And then I go through all of the fun stuff and like, what are we going to do? And where's the capital going to be? Which, of course, will have to be where I am right now, Athlone. Because can you imagine the arguments about Dublin and Belfast? Where will we have the parliament? Sorry, lads, we'll just put it in the middle of the country on the Shannon. We'll build a brand new Parliament House and you can all make your way down and it'll be great. And let's hope that happens. I mean, when I came to Athlone, I was humming what Fred Cook said, how do I get to Athlone? But I think the song I like best about Athlone is Athlone again, naturally.
Oh, on that delightful day. Was I married the last time we were talking? Like, did I tell you about our 1 year anniversary? No, I wouldn't have. No. We went up the Northford. There was just a little story that I think you'd love. Oh, yeah. Natasha booked, she went, no, it's a surprise, I'm not telling you where we're going. And for a long weekend, she had booked locations that were tied some way in with Game of Thrones. And we
Cool.
not following the actual tour, but just staying in a place like we stayed in the B&B that the Stark family, the Stark cast stayed in for their entirety of the. But we stayed in a place called Crawfordsburn. You and I would not have been normally the kind of gentleman to frequent this place, if you know what I mean. But I stuck out like a sore thumb. Not so much Natasha, because she went to a very nice school in Dublin, where they sang hymns, if you know what I mean. But what was hilarious was the owner came over. It was beautiful, beautiful restaurant. Food was, and we were getting the odd kind of, but they were very middle class people. The odd interesting look like, and we were younger than him by a lot. But when the owner came over, he said, "Would you mind if I sat down?" And he said it like a guy who was after, getting off a horse, and he was just wrecked. I went, "God, yeah, it's your joint, man. Sit down." And he was like, "Isn't this just fantastic?" I went, "Oh no, the food is outrageous. Honestly, it's really some of the best I've ever had." He went, "No, I mean, like, where did you? I heard your accent. You're from South, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, Tipperary." He goes, "Jesus, I've never the thought." And this is a man in his late 70s. Is the thought of that? I said, "But sure, it's not that far. It's pretty much motorway the entire way." He went, "No, it's far, if you know what I mean." But this is, and he was just looking around, going, "This scenario, isn't this exactly what we want?" I went, "Well, that's what we want." And Natasha completely had no. She was like, "What? Sure, it's Ireland, as far as I'm concerned. We didn't have to get on a plane. We just kept driving and then drove here." And the guy was just, you could see him. He was like, "On the house, dinner on the house. This is
wow."
Yeah. And like a banging, like stunning dinner. But it was the way he was so delighted with the idea of.
Yeah, but it's funny. I did a wedding for a guy from North Antrim, and all his uncles were North Antrim farmers. And I said, "Well, what do you think with this Brexit thing and you not getting your subvention anymore?" And they were like, "Well, we're going to have to think about it."
Which,
so they are thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's if Scotland falls, the rest tumble like dice. You know what I mean? And look, it's just the thing is to make the convincing case, though. And to make it the economic case, north and south, that it's going to work. You know what I mean? I think that's very important as well. And I think, when you go somewhere like Downpatrick and you see that St. Patrick is buried there, but nobody knows that.
Yes.
And St. Bridget is buried with them, and so's Columkill. And you're like going, lads, all they talk about is the Titanic and the Giant's Causeway. And there's loads more to Northern Ireland that we don't know. I mean, it's one of the best beaches in the world.
Yeah.
County Down rivals County Wicklow in terms of beauty, so we just have to open that up. And I think the more people like yourself can go up there and actually hang out and mix it up. I mean, they got to mix the schools. That's the main thing. And that's a really tough job. That's the first job,
Anyway, I'm going to let you get your massage / go to your gig.
I'm having dinner, Tom. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're booked in, and I don't want you to run over because, heaven forbid, the robots would come and kill you for not showing up on time.
Well, exactly, and I don't want to start running like AD McQueen in your last show and in not sensible shoes and breaking my elbow. That was very, very funny, ridiculous.
Oh, poor AD. Fair play. Like, she's a savage. She came on. I went, "No, you don't have to." She goes, "No, it'll be fine." And I could tell 5 minutes in, I'm like, "You're in excruciating pain, and on top of that, you're full of morphine right now. This is going to make for."
I know. I'm thinking of doing it to myself just to get a bit of morphine in.
But Commander Paddy Cullivan, it's been an honor.
Tom, it's been an honor. Go to paddycullivan.com as ever.
Absolutely. I'll put look immediately in the show notes. I'm going to find where the nearest one is, because as soon as I said you were on, Natasha was like, "Find out where it's close to here, anyway, close at all." And we'll go
back to Tip. I must bring it to Tip, but Kilkenny, I'd say, would be the closest.
Limerick would be the fine.
Limerick,
yeah, Limerick would be really close.
Whereabouts are you in Tip?
I'm in a place called. I wouldn't be far from Badja or Care.
Ooh.
So, both places very, like, we're in the parish, pretty much at both places. Like,
very good.
But yeah, I mean, Limerick.
Bell Table's going to be a big one. That's going to be great.
But
you'll probably be gigging. But if you can do it, I'll lash you on the door. Don't worry, it'll be great fun. All right.
Once again, thank you very, very much, brother.
We'll go for dinner beforehand.
I know a few guys. I know a few guys. I saw you.
Regular guys.
Thanks
Talk
a
to you
million,
later,
Paddy.
man.
Cheers, buddy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye.